Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Usually we talk about tasty vegetables, but today we're going to talk about the bugs that think you are tasty. Also, pineapple lily is an exotic plant that's easy to grow. Today we're going to learn all about it. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Natalie Baumgartner. Dr. Baumgartner is a residential and consumer horticulture specialist with UT Extension. And Mr. D is here.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, Mr. D. Chiggers, ticks, and mosquitoes. All right, you already itching?
Yeah, that makes you scratch, doesn't it?
We're gonna have to make sure that Dr. Natalie pays attention as well, because I know you like to hike and camp and things like that. So you might
little woodland creatures.
little
that like
creatures,
to
right?
Tag along. Yeah.
All right.
You know, the best thing I can say is DEET. Insect repellent, use DEET. There's been studies comparing the different concentrations of DEET, which are more effective, and one I saw had 15% was the most effective. You can get the deep woods or the
Right.
some of them that are 50% active ingredient. I don't really think that's necessary. You know, the weaker formulations will do just as good a job, but you do want at least 15% DEET. Use that. Also, Permanone, some of the pyrethrins are okay for use on your equipment, your boots, your clothes.
Okay, good.
Not on your skin. You don't put those on your skin.
Okay.
That, I really, as a turkey hunter, I really like to see a tick crawl onto my pants leg and die. I enjoy while I'm sitting there waiting on the turkey to come to me. I enjoy seeing that tick crawl up on my pant leg and just kind of roll over and all 8 of his little legs kick. But you know, in a yard situation, and I go to Red Book,
Sure.
2017, and we have some really, really good information. Some of the same insecticides do a good job of, in a landscape situation in your home, will help take care of them, even though I know a tick is not an insect. I'm not sure that a chigger is.
Yeah, I don't know about the chigger. That's a good question.
I know that a mosquito is an insect. So fortunately, insecticides work on all of these. Now, you know, an immature tick only has 6 legs. So you can, to say that all ticks, an adult tick has 8 legs. But just because it has 6 legs, immature is not an insect. It's still not an insect, right? But I'm looking at ticks, and I'm looking at chiggers, and I wonder mosquitoes may have something. What I'm looking for is to see if the same insecticide will take care of them. Of course, they will not. I do see that for ticks and chiggers, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
And you can treat your yard with a labeled insecticide every 4 to 6 weeks as needed. And if you have problems, I live out in the woods, and so I have problems with chiggers and ticks.
Oh, chiggers are tough, man.
I don't treat my yard. I use the insect repellents. But if you were having a party and if you wanted to treat your yard, you could.
Okay.
Cyfluthrin and beta-cyfluthrin are insecticides that are labeled for use to control chiggers. Ticks, bifenthrin, beta-cyfluthrin, permethrin, lambda-cyhalothrin. You know, there are a few more that are labeled to put out in your yard to control ticks and chiggers. Some of the comments about that, and I'll go to mosquitoes a little bit later, but some of the comments, you know, for chiggers, they mow your lawn regularly. That goes without saying. Remove weeds and brambles from fence rows, and it stresses that you use commercial repellents around your ankles and waist for personal protection, because they'll get in, where you're exposed.
Yeah.
Apply DEET repellent to your skin, and then the insecticide, Permanone, to your shoes, cuffs, and you can apply these to your socks and things like that before you put them on and wait, but you need to wait at least 2 hours before you put them on to allow the fire to dry.
Okay,
The
sure.
product needs to dry. On the ticks, that was about chiggers. Ticks, it basically mow the lawn and control weeds. You know,
Okay.
if you lower the moisture in the grass microclimate, it allows sunlight to penetrate, which tends to cause ticks to dry out. You know,
Okay.
so you know I live in the woods, so
Habitat
that's why I have ticks.
modification,
Right,
essentially.
modify the
Exactly.
habitat.
My goodness.
Again, exact same instructions about apply DEET to skin and the insecticide to your shoes and things like that.
For the
so
tick.
for ticks and chiggers,
ticks,
you pretty much treat the same way.
And I tell you what, there's been more news stories about ticks this summer. You know.
Well, they could be dangerous. You know,
Yes.
there's several diseases that they carry. you
And
know.
increasing number,
Yes.
we're seeing
Right,
some
yeah.
new incidences.
And probably part of that is probably because the diagnosis is probably better now than it.
Yeah.
Because I have friends who've had problems, and years later they said, "Oh, well, it had to be a tick bite. You know,
Right.
it's why I was sick for so long. I had all those
Right,
problems."
yeah.
So yeah, you need to try to keep them from getting you. They
Yeah.
sure like to feed on us.
They definitely do. And I own Carol Reese, you know, some years ago had a tick bite.
Right. She have spotted fever? Or
She has spotted
Rocky Mountain
fever.
Spotted fever.
Spotted
Yeah,
fever.
she sure did. She sure did.
Now, mosquitoes, they are insects, and they like to stay in shrubbery, and they generally will come out, you know, late in the day or early in the morning. They are kind of, I guess, crepuscular in nature, but they'll come out anytime they're hungry, I think.
Yeah,
They
I would
come
agree
out.
with that.
But there is, if you have water and standing water pools or ponds or anything like that, there is a Bacillus thuringiensis, a BT, that you can put in there that will feed on mosquito larvae, and I would encourage you to do that because it doesn't hurt any beneficial insects and doesn't create any problems. I think mosquito bits is one of the trade names, and mosquito dunks
Yeah,
is another
familiar with
trade name
those,
for the
right.
BT. Methoprene also is a insect growth regulator type thing that will prevent them from molting and prevent them from maturing. But that's in standing water. If you have standing water that you don't need, don't do that.
Well, I have standing water in many
Yeah,
instances
you know, and
in the backyard.
people with horses, for example, that have horse troughs.
Right, right.
You know, if you're out there taking care of those horses every day, you know, you don't need a big horse trough. Just have enough for them to drink water so that you can pour it out, give them fresh
That's a
water
good
every
point.
day, you know, and pour it out every day because it takes, I think, 3 days for the
Yes,
life
it's
cycle
3 days.
or
It
something
is.
like that.
It's
And
3
if
days.
you don't let water stand over 3 days, you shouldn't have that problem. But the pyrethrin sprays for outside your buildings, they're available as an aerosol or a fogger. Resmethrin. You can malathion. I'm not sure what the municipal governments are using now. For years they used malathion. It's what when the truck
Right, when it
drives
comes
around
by the neighborhoods.
And I don't know whether they still use that or not. But it again, it works well to control mosquitoes. You can apply those types of things. Malathion, permethrin, and other pyrethroids can be applied to vegetation on the perimeter of your property, and that will kill the adults. The adults feed on nectar during the day, and then I don't know. Then they get bloodthirsty late in the day, and then come
And they
after.
come out. And most of those pretty much, you know, hang around plant material. You know, the foliage of the plants, the underside, yeah, especially the ones that are in the shade.
Yeah.
You know, they
Good
just
protection.
Yeah. I'm flipping down through here. Unclogged gutters. You know, gutters can hold water, so
Yeah,
make sure your gutters are unclogged. Empty bird baths. You
Yeah.
know, we don't just
Standing
leave that water
water.
there for long. You know, the birds like fresh water too, just like the horses do.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, a lot of common sense, but a lot of DEET, a lot of insect repellent, and continue to go outside, enjoy the outdoors. You know, the fresh air is still better outside than inside.
That's right. Yeah, we want you to enjoy the great outdoors, but do be careful.
It's worth
Right.
the hassle.
Thanks,
correct.
Mr. D. Appreciate that. Good stuff.
This is a really fun plant called Tiger Eyes Sumac, and it just has such a vibrant color in the garden with this chartreuse foliage, these beautiful cut leaves, and the newest growth has red stems, and they're actually kind of have a velvet texture to them. So just a really neat plant. Now, I will caution you, it spreads underground and forms colonies. So you need to plant this in a place where it's gonna have a lot of room to naturalize and really be the star of the show. Tiger Eyes Sumac.
All right, Doc. Pineapple lily. And I will confess, I don't know much about pineapple lily. Mr. D, you know anything about that?
Well, I'm looking for the pineapple.
Well, we have a few pictures. You look at this and you're like, well, the lily, I can
lily,
see the
I can
lily.
see that.
What do
Right.
you mean about the pineapple? But the
Yeah.
first time that you see a picture of the flower, it will.
Okay, I got you.
Make sense.
All right.
So this is just a small seedling, but when we have a mature plant, we'll actually have the nice bloom stem come up, and flowers will just bloom on that stem with a little top knot of it's brox, modified leaves, and it will look like a little flowering pineapple. Yeah. So.
That might help us out, Mr. D, a
Yeah,
little bit, right?
when it's blooming, it's fairly
it's blooming.
self-explanatory.
Yeah, could you come back then?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I'm-
I mean, we have some
trying
great
to
ones in
picture-
the flower bed. They were just a little bit hard for me to dig up in front of my house, but I brought some pictures.
Well,
so-
good,
Okay.
good.
So
We'll
we
take a
have
look
some
at
good
those.
images.
There
You
you
can
go.
kind
That'll
of
work.
see what this looks like in full bloom.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about the pineapple
Yeah.
lily.
So this is Eucomus, which is
Okay,
the
Eucomus.
genus name, and these are actually a bulb. Well, obviously, they're in the lily family, related there, and they're actually native to South Africa. So they are from some of the various regions down there, and there are several species, 10 or 12 of them.
Wow.
And so the cool thing about what we have now in this opportunity in horticulture is that they can grow in many parts of our, kind of listening and growing area, right? So
right.
they're labeled as Zone 7. You guys are quite safely Zone
well, we're
7
good.
here, yeah.
We're good this way.
With protection in Zone 6.
Okay.
But coming from different areas in South Africa, we have the opportunity to bring in some of those different species, crossbreed, and maybe get a little bit better winter hardiness, get a little bit better, summer durability. And
that.
so they're something that can perform pretty well in a range of soil conditions. I have them in my suburban front yard with all the topsoil pretty
Gone,
much scraped
right,
away, right? So as with many things, we say it's not necessarily, doesn't take fabulous soil quality, but we need good drainage.
Sure,
So, you can kill them with winter moisture would be the best way to wipe them out,
Okay.
if that was your goal.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you introduce them as easy to grow, and so of course as horticulturalists we always twitch a little bit every time we declare anything easy.
It's easy.
Because we know that we ourselves and certainly others are capable of wiping out anything. But so far these have been pretty low maintenance and consistent in the flower beds, and that I work with a local gardener in Knoxville, and so this is where some of these crossbreeds are coming
out of
from, and
Knoxville.
so this
Okay.
is actually a cross of a couple of different species, and so we're kind of evaluating seedlings, looking at flower shape and color and lots of the variability. One of the fun things about working with a plant that is, it's in trade. You can go out and buy sparkling burgundy and different kinds of eucomus, but it's not a hydrangea, right?
Right,
It's not a petunia that we've been growing for a very long time. And so there's still opportunity to make crosses and see
that.
different types of things. And so that's one of the things we're excited about with sharing with gardeners in Tennessee, some of the opportunities for gains there.
What about shade tolerance?
Which is another one of the interesting things that we are, we're looking at and hoping to gather information as more people are growing it across Tennessee. So in most of our gardens in Knoxville, we tend to grow it in the full sun, can handle quite a bit of sun. But as we think about moving westward, warmer
Yes,
conditions.
especially this way.
We may get to the point where we say, well, if you're growing in Memphis, a little bit of shade is certainly fine. You think about a little bit of afternoon shade.
Yes.
And so we're interested in performance across shade. We want to do some trials to kind of see what it does under different levels of shade, but also the fact that we may have some plants that really perform well and with a little bit more sun. And what about the leaf color? This, we see a little bit of purple on here, but sometimes the coloration, both in our stems and our leaves, the depth of that color can vary depending upon the sunlight that we give them. There are some well-known cultivars that are completely purple in their leaves. And lots of times we know when we think about purple leaf trees, lots of different things. How vibrant that color is can depend on light levels. So there are lots of opportunities to learn in different geographical areas how these perform.
Okay. What zone is Knoxville?
Well, in most of the time, we would think of ourselves in that 7 range. We have water, we have urban areas.
Okay.
So we really haven't had trouble with winter survival. But when we think about some of the other ranges that, of the folks that I work with, well, I wasn't doing the plateau, right?
Oh,
We may freeze out on the Cumberland Plateau, but maybe even be warmer than ideal in some parts of the western part of the state. So we're still evaluating a lot of the performance and how we can vary the species to perform best. Cool things about the flowers, we have a long flower life, and they can actually be used as a cut flower. So when we drop the petals, the ovaries actually stay present, and lots of times they'll be purple and pretty as the plant ages, really start to look kind of pineapple-like as we start to see that seed set. So long vase life, and some interesting opportunities there for a tropical-looking plant that can survive in most of the climates that we work with here in Tennessee.
You think you like that, Mr. D?
Yeah. Does it taste like a pineapple?
Well, I don't think that I've eaten any. Yeah. But some of the interesting genetic variability has a lot to do with plant height.
Okay.
So some of the cultivars that are available on the market can be very compact, really deep, ruffled leaves, can be great container plants.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that.
Whether you want to protect them a little bit during the winter, if we're in colder climates, or you'd just rather have a compact container plant, there are some opportunities for a lot of range and sizes, leaf shape, leaf color, stem color,
Very attractive
flower
looking.
color. Yeah.
How long before you can get a bloom, though?
Well, it kind of depends on if you started from division or from seed.
Okay.
So this is actually a seedling, and it will not be blooming this year.
Yeah.
But sometimes if we divide, we may be able to get a late bloom that year that we divide. And those are some of the things that we're thinking about as we make evaluations for some of our crops as well. This how fast does it clump? How quick can we get divisions, and how fast can we get to a bloom? And every once in a while, we might even see a rebloomer in the fall.
It's pretty cool. Another question, though. What about pest problems, disease problems?
So far, we really haven't had a lot of insect damage. Some of the other things that we haven't seen a lot of issues with so far are deer damage. That's one of those things that we never make broad statements about deer resistance. We say general things like, seems to not be highly attractive to deer feeding.
Deer won't eat it.
Right.
You don't say that. You don't say that.
Right. We never say that, but we haven't grown these in areas where there are certainly deer populations, and this hasn't been one of their early hits, right?
If you want to check that out, plant them out at Agri Center, because we've got plenty of deer out there.
That's right.
Come on.
Plenty of
We'll
put you a
plenty
little
of
plot out there.
evaluation spots
Right
that
up
we
by
can.
Chris's office.
Yeah, plenty of deer. No problem with that. Well, Dr. Nally, we thank you much.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
that. Learn a little bit about that pineapple looking there, Mr. D.
well,
That's pretty good.
Tropical plant that's an opportunity for us.
All right. There you have it. Thank you, Doc. Appreciate that.
If you have an oscillator sprinkler that has a port that gets stopped up like you see here, there's a trick to getting this cleaned out. So I'm going to shut the water off, and not all sprinklers have this, but the better quality ones do. On the end of the arch here is a piece that unscrews. Once you unscrew that, then there's this little tip on the very end to clean out the port. So what you want to do is turn the water back on, and the reason you want to do that, hold your finger over the end and you can see which ones are stopped up. Take your little device here and poke it in the hole. That forces the trash to come out the end, so you got to have the water on so the trash comes out. Still got one stopped up. All right, looks like we're free. I'm gonna turn it off, screw this back on. You wanna hold on to the bar when you're screwing it back in, otherwise you might strip the gear here. Now that we got it clean, let's turn it on and see what it looks like. And yeah, all clean. So easy way to clean it out using that. Again, not all brands of sprinklers have that, but the better quality ones do.
All right, here's our Q&A session. Doug, you help us out, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, here's our first via email. How do you root roses from clippings? And this is from Miss Kathleen. So, what do you think about that one?
Well, first I'm going to give
Okay,
I'm going to give my university disclaimer.
Okay,
right?
go ahead.
First thing is we want to make sure that we're not rooting cuttings that are protected, you know, patented varieties. So
Exactly
there are
right.
some things that
Exactly
technically
right.
we should not root, and
That's
you
right.
know, a lot of our hybrid teas and things like that would fall in that category.
Good disclaimer. You exactly right.
Go to jail.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. Now, since that's been said and done,
How do you do it?
how do you do it?
Yeah, so then we get into, we have an opportunity to do hardwood or softwood
Okay.
cuttings. And this time of year, we could actually do softwood cuttings after the bloom has died. Actually take this year's growth, a little bit of rooting powder, and actually, you know, root that 8, 10, 12-inch cutting in, you know, peat moss.
Yeah,
for
peat
like-
moss or something like that
Yeah.
works. I actually have a little experience with this. I've actually done this before. Yeah, because I have a lot of roses at home. Yeah, 6 to 8 inch stem.
Yeah.
I usually look for 2 or 3 buds though. Okay, clean off those bottom leaves. You can actually, they can root in water, but you can use a rooting
Yeah.
hormone. Okay, you just dip it, you know, the bottom end. 45-degree angle cut though really helps
Right.
to expose, you know,
Surface
the surface
area.
area.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, just you know, dip that in some rooting hormone. Okay, you can put that in potting soil, or you can put it directly to the ground.
Yeah, if
you
it's
know?
someplace
If
where
it's
you
someplace
can really
we
manage
right,
closely.
You can, you know,
Yeah.
control it the best
Make
you
sure
can.
that it doesn't dry out.
Right,
while
because
you're
you don't want it to
trying
dry out. It's the,
Yeah.
it's the biggest thing. Or, you know, I think it was 1-to-1, you know, peat to perlite.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. What, 4 to 6 weeks, had roots. All right, here's our next via email. We have 5 Japanese holly plants in our backyard. One has a number of branches that have died since it was planted. This is the second one in the same spot to do this. Another plant 3 feet away, just fine. What could be causing this? And this is from Miss Margie in Germantown. So, Mr. D, let's think about this for a second as you look at the pictures there. 5 plants in the backyard, all right? But the second one in the same spot has died again.
Do they have a dog?
Oh.
A male dog? Or does frequent visitors, could that cause that?
Possibly.
And either that or there's a problem with the soil in that one spot.
I would think so, maybe.
I think about maybe drainage.
Drainage is the first thing that comes to my
Issues.
mind. Yeah. Boxwood, holly shrubs do not like wet feet. All right, so drainage could be an issue. So that's the first thing I thought about for Tathara root rot. Okay, if you have bad drainage, a lot of
Yeah.
water just kind of standing around. The second thing, because we get a lot of questions about boxwoods, of course, at the office. It could be decline, boxwood decline. And that's, the decline is actually a combination of a lot of different cultural practices, right? So it could be drainage issues, it could be improper pH, it could be compact soils, but guess what else it could be? It could be too much mulch. Or it could be planted too deep, one I just thought about. So it could be a combination of all of those, which actually leads to boxwood decline, because you get a piece of stem here, you get a branch here, and all of a sudden everything
Yeah.
is gone.
Yeah, when you look at that, multiple areas in the plant showing some death and decline.
So that's why, it could be decline. And then, we really have to, get a piece of it to really see it under a microscope. There's Volutella, blight, but you would know that because you would have those pink spore masses on those leaves. I've seen that, before in this area, but, again, we would need a piece of that to actually see it. But I think it may have something to do with drainage. That's what I think. And if that be the case, you just need to build that area up. Yeah, because again, boxwood do not like wet feet. All right, Miss Margie, hope that helps you out. Here's our next via email. What is this on my hydrangea? And this is from Mr. Bill right here in Memphis. Good picture, good picture. We've seen that, of course. I mean, you see it on your pretty much your big leaf hydrangea types, your oak leaf hydrangeas for sure, Cercospora.
Yeah, and that's definitely the first thing when we see kind of that reddish perimeter a little bit around that. It definitely makes us think Cercospora. But in some ways, the more important question is, okay, treat or not to treat.
This time of the year, I mean, of course you're going to see it. Look, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It looks bad aesthetically, right? It's not going to kill the plant, you know, just kind of decrease the vigor a little bit. But this time of the year, I wouldn't be too concerned about it, you know.
We're going to lose those leaves before too
long. Anyway, right. And then if you can, you know, catch some of those leaves when they're young and maturing, I mean, you can just, you know, pull those leaves off, you know, but do practice good sanitation. I mean, because they do contain spores, which are spread by wind and rain. Right.
Yeah, so leaving those leaves on the ground could then potentially increase your chances for the
Definitely
for the future.
could. All right. So, Mr. D, Dr. Nally, we're out of time. It's been fun. Thanks for being here.
It's been fun.
All right. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. If you want more information on blood-sucking bugs or the pineapple lily, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have links to extension publications on each topic. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plots, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.